Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the panel today, this afternoon, a culinary celebration in conversation with DK's Cookbook Creatives. My name is Ron Block, and I'm the branch manager here at Cuyahoga County Public Library in Cleveland. I'm also a co-host on the Friends in Fiction podcast. Cookbooks are more popular than ever, and creators are able to share the story, inspiration, entertainment, and more. And so, with that, I'm so excited to welcome all our DK Cookbook author guests. First up is B. Dylan Hollis, but since we're friends now, I can call him Dylan. He's the author of Baking Across America. Hello, Dylan.
Hi there, Ron. How are you?
Great, great. Welcome. I'm ready to do this. Let's go. Okay, next up is Asma Khan, who's the author of Monsoon, who won't be joining us live, but we'll be showing a little video from her in a little bit so you'll get to know her and get to know her work. Next up, we have Danny Freeman, author of Italianish. Hello, Danny.
Hi there. Thanks for
Hi.
having me.
Yes, yes. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Okay, and definitely not least, we have Arnie Segovia, author of ArnieTex, and this is I think it's his debut book, and he's with DK, so he's in great hands. So welcome to the panel, Arnie.
Hey guys, howdy. Howdy from Texas.
Yes. Before we get started, though, I want to encourage everybody out there to, if you do nothing else from this, well, yes, buy the books, but I would love to have you follow each one of these guests on social media. You're in for a huge treat. You're going to go down rabbit holes, and you are just going to be hooked on all their stuff. They're just amazing content creators, and so in addition to these amazing books, their social media is just what we need. Okay. I have a series of questions, and we're going to talk about them, and we can start a conversation with that. So I'm going to start with you, if it's all right, Arnie.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, what a story leading up to the publication of this book. When I'm reading your book and your story, I'm just like kind of blown away. So can you share your journey from starting in barbecue competition to content creator to cookbook publication?
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked to cook. I mean, I grew up and in our culture, I mean, we always gather around in the kitchen and watch mom and grandmas cook, and my dad always cooked outside. My grandfather was a chef, so when we had family gatherings, he would always fire up the barbecue pit. So I grew up around that, and fast forward a bunch of years, and I was in the car business in management, and I was fortunate to have an employer that allowed me a little time once a month to go experiment with barbecue competitions, and so we had fun doing that. And then later on, we had a restaurant for a couple of years. That was the most fun I had working, but I won't do it again. But anyway, it was a great experience. After that, we all know what happened back in '09, the big crash. After that, we got back into competition cooking, and by 2013, I was doing it full time. It was a fun experience. We got to go to Oklahoma and Florida to cook and everywhere in between, and it was just a really, really fun experience. Um, we were super successful in Texas, and we were the top team in Texas for a couple of years, and that led to us teaching classes in person. We traveled all over Texas from tip to tip to tip, and taught classes, but the classes got smaller and smaller, so we created an online class in 2019 that was very successful. Then a couple years later, COVID comes in and we're all stuck at home. So we're cooking at home all the time, kind of getting geared up to whenever COVID is over and we can get back on the trail. But we also started a spice company in that time. And our video journey basically started to promote our spices. And it turned out that people really enjoyed our recipes and our videos. And um, here we are. We quit competing and sold our RV, and then that led to DK sending us an email. We had already talked about a cookbook the year before, and my family's like, "You're not ready for that. You're not ready for that. We're not there yet." Like, all right, cool. And then DK sends an email one day, and hey, we'd like to do a cookbook with you? And I'm like, there it is. There's the sign, right?
Yes.
So it was fun. It was really really neat, in my opinion, super serendipitous situation and event. And so, yeah, we definitely were not going to say no to the opportunity.
Yep, everything in its right time.
Yeah.
Now, I've worked in libraries and I've worked in food things for like 3,000 years. So for a time in Florida and Georgia, I was a barbecue judge. So I was reading all your stories. I was like, oh, I know exactly what he's talking about. You got to have it perfect. It's got to be this, it's got to be that. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, Dylan, you're up. So you called this book the sweetest road trip the 21st century has so far seen. Tell us about the book and how did the idea come to you?
Well, when you're talking desserts and you're talking about the United States, I came to find that every state does it a little differently. This all started with my TikTok content, much like Arnie said, during COVID times, we were all stuck inside and we were trying different things. And it was serendipitous that I decided to start baking back then. And I've always collected old cookbooks, so I started baking from them. And whenever I would upload these recipes on TikTok, I would get comments saying, "Oh, I remember my mom used to make this, my granny used to make this dessert." But then I would hit on a recipe that was famous in the state. Take like Buckeyes, a little confection from Ohio. And the comments were crazy. Everyone was like, this is the fantastic, this is the pride of my state. Everyone here loves them. More people in other states should bake them. And I found it very interesting that, such a recipe, just a recipe rather, could cause such excitement. It was like a hero, it was like a celebrity. And I said, ooh, that's a good idea. Would it not be a learned experience to see if I could capture that from every state? Now, it's a bit harder when you're dealing with desserts
Mhm.
because there's a lot of variety even within Texas, just how barbecue's done. So the savory scene is massive, but with desserts it's a bit harder. So there was a lot of research, but it came about that, yeah, let's bake across the country. Let's see what every state has to offer, and it was a trip.
Yeah, it's so well, we'll talk about the research a little bit more in a bit, but I'm a recent Ohioan, and so Buckeyes were kind of new to me, and I'm like, okay, whatever. But actually, in my backyard is a Buckeye tree, which is actually a nut that you don't eat. I guess they're poisonous or something, but
Yeah.
it's representing those anyway. So it always has a connection, and I love that like peaches and all the different things that you created were so various and really talk about they could be in more than one state, but then you make a case for them being in the state you chose. So I love that. Okay, let's talk to Danny now. Danny, let's start with this title. It's really intriguing because it doesn't really say anything specific. The title is Italianish. What does that refer to, and how did it become a cookbook?
Well, I grew up in an Italian American family eating a lot of classic Italian American dishes from my mother was a great cook, is a great cook, my grandmother, aunts and uncles. Just that type of family where food is always abundant at every gathering, holiday, celebration. Um, and so that is the food that I was really rooted in. Fast forward to today, I have two young kids. I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I used to be a lawyer back in my former life, and I left my job as a lawyer to be a stay-at-home dad. And, like everyone nowadays, everyone is so busy. I'm dealing with toddlers, I'm dealing with their taste preferences. So I really started to adapt a lot of the food that I ate as a kid for kind of the modern life that we live now. Um, I don't necessarily always have time to cook the food that my grandmother was cooking. I have to make easy versions. I have to make versions that will satisfy my kids. And so that's really how Italianish developed, was just the food that I was cooking for my family, really. Um, it's not quite what I ate as a kid, but it's really rooted in those flavors. So it's you know, taking something like a lasagna and turning into like little lasagna bites that are sort of handheld and easy, or it's taking a dish and making it into a soup that you can have leftovers all week. Um, so it's really rooted in the flavors of Italian American cooking, but it's a little Italianish because it's trying to fit it into the modern world. Um, and so it became a cookbook because my first cookbook was called Danny Loves Pasta and it was all about homemade fresh pasta. So that was a very, single focus. Um, and now I was really, after my second daughter was born, she had a horrible colic. If you've ever had a baby with colic, screaming nonstop every second of the day
Yep.
and every night. And so I honestly did not have time to make fresh pasta anymore. I didn't have time to do the beautiful little artistic pasta that I was doing for TikTok and social media and for my first cookbook. So I was just making a lot more of this Italianish food, and it really led to a full cookbook.
That's great. That's great. So I actually write about cookbooks for library journals some now, and that's one of the trends I'm seeing is everybody's looking for those old flavors and the traditional things, but in a much faster, easier way to fit into life today. So I think it fits right in with this trend. So thanks for
Exactly.
that. Okay, so now let's take a little aside and welcome a message from Asma Khan, who's the author of Monsoon, who couldn't join us live today, but we're going to hear from her now.
Hello, I'm Asma Khan. I'm the author of Monsoon, a cookbook that celebrates everything that is so beautiful about Indian food. The basic of Indian food has never really been explained. The impression is that our food is difficult to cook. So I'm really hoping that once people go through Monsoon, have a look at all the recipes, they will want to cook from it and hopefully later on go and buy it. Monsoon is a book that is divided into 6 chapters, named and based on the 6 seasons in Bengal. In Bengal, we have 6 seasons. It's really about produce and seasonality and celebrating just the simplest of things. So the book's been out for a bit, and I'm just overwhelmed looking at people cooking from this book and deeply touched because I'm seeing people who are strangers making dishes that my grandmother made. And it looks correct. It looks great. And one of the most popular dishes in my book is a cabbage dish. But the essence really is in the flavoring, building up the flavors. It's got cashew nuts, it's got whole cumin seeds, dried red chilies. And that's the beauty of Monsoon, because every recipe, the ingredients are easy to access. You don't need to go very far to get it or order online. The simplicity is also in the spicing. And it's not because I've tried to make it simple. The reality is that in our food, flavor is built in a modular way, but also interwoven. So you don't add huge amounts of spices. That's a misconception. You don't need a larder full of spices. You need to know what spice you're using and how to use it. I began this book by writing a few pages on how to cook, how to use spice, even things like how to use heat, how to make ghee. It's an addiction. Once you know how to make ghee, it ups your game so much, not just with Indian food. You can add it on roast chicken. It's brown butter, but deeper, more intense than that. It just gets incredible flavor in. What kinds of oils to use, how do you fry spices, getting the most out of the least amount of spices. A lot of people who've cooked from the book tell me that this is where they found the book most useful compared to a lot of other books that they have, that they feel that I'm sitting next to them, I'm holding their hand, I'm telling them what to do. I'm essentially, I think I'm a storyteller. I love to tell stories. So I'm telling you stories not just about the books, but also why are you putting this ingredient in? And one of the reasons why Monsoon is, for me, very significant is that it tries to explain, not with blinding you with science and with really jargon, the Ayurvedic concept of how we eat. In our tradition, in the East, food was first medicine, then anything else. And all the spices we used all had medicinal value to it. Today, a lot of people know about the benefit of cinnamon, benefit of turmeric. This, for us, we've known for ages. And every dish, I do explain that there is this particular ingredient that's going to be good for that. And when I've actually divided the book out into seasons, I've also picked things like the autumnal dishes are really about boosting your immune system, helping you feel better. Winter dishes are about heat. Spring is about vibrancy and tang. It's eating with the seasons. I try to capture this almost beautiful sacredness of food, of the joy of eating, of the belief that everybody needs to invest in themselves, and this is by cooking. The simplest of food, there's an omelette curry. I mean, I can promise you that anyone can make that, because my nephew, who's never cooked in his life, has cooked 2 things from the book for me when I was in New York, and it worked. So it's the simplicity, because it's not that I was looking for recipes that are, oh, these are, simple, dumbed down dishes. No, these are things we ate every day. This is my home food. But I'm sharing it with you, including a dish which took a long time. It's a yellow curry, because no one could figure out what was called. It was always called yellow curry. And eventually there was a fight in my family on who originated the recipe, and everything all been settled and sorted out now. And I love the fact that I can share those kinds of recipes that don't exist anywhere, but also some really classic recipes that are made for big weddings, big family gatherings. Chai, there are different versions of chai. I've been seeing a lot of people putting posts of chai that they've made from the book. So there's literally something for everybody in this book. And I think that a great place for it to be is in a library, because if someone is unfamiliar with the cuisine or has misconceptions, they can take this book, take it home, read it, and then understand that this is the simplest of cuisines to cook. You just need someone to tell you how to do it.
Okay, I'm sold. Let's go.
Wow.
That's great. That's great. And that just goes to show you that all of the books that we're talking about today, they're just so representative of a time, a place, a culture, and it's where I think the world comes together. I've always said food is the great unifier, and this is such a great example of that. So that was great, and I got an early peek at that book too, and it's really, really good, and it's everything she said and more. So I encourage people to check it out. Okay, let's start with some more questions here, Arnie. Um, this is your first book, so it's kind of your first experience with all this. What were some of the challenges, and what were some of the most rewarding parts of putting it all together?
Yeah. Man, we never started out to be like, okay, I'm going to be a social media content creator, right? As I said earlier, we really just started the social media videos to promote our spice company. And we had intended to have 3 or 4 more spices out there, or different flavors than we currently have. But the videos took off so well, we got so busy creating content, and then doing brand deals, and which are really fun to do as well. And so we were just already in a pace that was like at the limit, right? We were pegged at 120, or whatever cars do nowadays, 150, some of them, you know. And so then the book deal came around, and in my simple head, it was like, oh yeah, that should be easy. I got 200 recipes online already. All I got to do is copy and paste, right? Well, what I didn't realize was, number one, I don't cook by recipes, right? I do a little this, a little that, and taste. Oh yeah, I need some more of this or that, right? I mean, like all great grandmas and moms cook, right? And
Right.
so the biggest challenge for me was to actually recook all those recipes with measurements, and then cook them and cook them and cook them to get them where I'm like, okay, I feel good about this. Somebody can go recreate this. And we do get those comments now, even online, without the actual written recipe, where people recreate them and they're very happy with them. But that was probably the biggest challenge, number one. Number two was actually finding the time to do that. And so we had to sacrifice something. Life is always full of, give and take, right? And so we had to give up developing other flavors in the meantime, while we actually worked on the cookbook. And so we were also trying to run and manage the social media company, and also the spice company. And then, just life in general, right? I mean, you got weddings, you got parties, you got family gatherings, you got car broke down, you got different things going on every day. We all experience these fast-paced life things that we live in. So that was the biggest challenge, really, was time, and then creating the exact recipes that we wound up putting in there. I think those were the biggest challenges. And the most rewarding part, I think, was, like Brooke kept telling me, wait till you get the book in your hand, then you'll be like, and he was right. Yeah, once I got the book in my hand, I was like, yes, I have a book. This is so cool, man. And just being able to share what I grew up eating, as she was saying, these are just mostly foods that I grew up around, and that my culture enjoys. And she is so spot on some of the benefits and positives about some of the spices that they use and that we all use, right? There's always that side benefit. And I sometimes will throw that in there about the salt, pepper, garlic. I'm like, I mean, this is not a health channel, but each one of these ingredients, when I researched them, has some kind of health benefit. So it's actually good for you too, right? So those are all of the pluses, on the other side to answer that question as best I can.
That's great. I think getting that first book in your hand, I've seen so many people who talk about that, and it's like a dream come true for them. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm glad to know that there's health benefits to Tex-Mex food now. I'm all set, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of them there that people don't even realize. And she mentioned, like cinnamon and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a honey guy like all my life, forever. I put honey in my coffee and that's it. But like if I make myself a fruit bowl, people ask me, how come you don't weigh 400 pounds? Well, because I mean, it's all balanced, right? I love fruit. I love nuts. That's my snack when I'm on the road, or raisins and nuts. That's what I eat. But when I make myself a fruit bowl, I'll put honey on it. I'll put cinnamon. I'll put turmeric, and what's the other one? The ginger. Those are my three things plus the honey that I gotta have on my already sweet fruit, right? So you got that sugar rush, but there's also the health benefit that goes with that. And that's mainly the reason I do it. But yeah, a lot of great benefits from food.
Good. Okay, Dylan. Obviously you are attached to and you're very interested in vintage recipes. What first drew you to those recipes, and were you prepared for the overwhelming attention that your work was getting?
No, not at all.
It's
And it was overwhelming.
yeah,
It was because you take a dessert from, 1920, and they're using such strange ingredients to try and get over whether it's rationing or sort of Great Depression issues. And they're really trying some wild, wacky, and wonderful things. And I knew that there would be a bit of shock value to that, or a bit of, attention by baking an old recipe that, again, a grandmother used to make. But no, the response from the internet from such sort of old-timey recipes was unusual to me, because we're all engrossed in sort of food content online, and there's a lot of the latest thing, making cakes out of just olive oil or as crazy vegan things, and so this was in complete opposition to that. So it really quite surprised me.
well, I'm going to say that your first cookbook, some of the things in there were actually like kind of nostalgic for me, because I grew up way out in the country, and I was known at school for bringing these weird cakes to school for my lunch. And my mother would make things like tomato soup cake that nobody had ever
Yeah.
heard of, and these potato chip cookies, and some of these other. I was like, oh, it's just very cool, very cool. And the popularity for me was really crazy, because I went to an ALA event in Chicago, and I thought, oh, I'll just get up and say hello to Dylan and whatever. And I couldn't get anywhere near you. People were everywhere. They were around the building just to see you. You kind of hit a nerve with people too, and you have a whole young demographic as well that just follow everything you do. So congratulations on all that.
Thank you. And it's not so much me as it is, if you look at the essence of dessert, unlike, you know, cookery, barbecue or pasta, you're not you're not making that because, it's something special. Well, it is, but you can eat that every day. It's dinner. Everyone needs dinner. Everyone needs lunch. You can have all of those things for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But a dessert, you rarely make those compared to, savory cookery. So right there's something frivolous about a dessert. There's something special there for birthdays, there for weddings. There's a reason I would go to a wedding where there's, lasagna instead of a wedding cake, but there's something special about the dessert. So I think we really captured what dessert means outside of just ingredients.
It's very true, very true. Okay, Danny. So we talked a little bit ago about the first cookbook and things. So you've already been through that process. Your first cookbook, Danny Loves Pasta, was a big hit. But so now you're moving on to your second one, and even though it's a little bit different focus, what did you learn from creating the first cookbook to your second?
Well, my first cookbook, because it was such a singular focus on fresh pasta and how to use vegetables and herbs and spices to make colorful pasta and how to make fun shapes, it was almost like a cookbook meets an arts and crafts book. You know, there was instructions on how to make pasta shapes and things like that. With Italianish, it's set up more as a traditional cookbook. There's snacks and appetizers, there's soup, salad, main course, dessert. Um, but I still wanted to take some of that sort of creative energy from the colorful pasta and bring it to this wider spectrum of Italian American food. So I tried to weave in, um, my perspective that maybe started with pasta, but now applied to a little bit wider spectrum of food. So how to make creative dishes, how to make them fun. I really try to make food that is, both practical, it's easy weeknight dinners, but also can be fun and can be joyful and, just can be a happy thing to make for your family. Because I have so many fond memories surrounding food when I was growing up and how that was, just such a celebratory thing, even if it was just a regular meal. Um, so, I thought of ways that I could, um, take a fun dish and make it in a new way you haven't seen before, or adapt common recipes but make them better for my kids. So I'm thinking one of like um, tiramisu is a classic Italian dish. It's not one that my 4-year-old loves. It's with that coffee flavor. But I made a strawberry lemon tiramisu for the book because that's summery and fruity and fun, and she loves those flavors, and she loves everything that is pink. So get to incorporate some strawberries in that. So really thinking about how I can kind of marry this idea of food that we're making at home for our kids with food that I grew up, eating as a kid, with also this fun energy from the first book and the colorful vibrancy that I tried to capture.
Great. And one of the messages I got from your book was that you are kind of encouraging people to kind of tweak things a little bit to make do with what they have on hand or what they prefer for a flavor, because it's when you're trying to get something done in a quick amount of time, that sometimes they have to mix things in. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, when I wrote this book, I spent the summer in Italy last year, and this is the first time I've gone to Italy with kids before. So it was a very different experience. We were not, fine dining, drinking wine all night like maybe when we were younger. It was a lot of eating food, street food, and things like that. And Italian food is very simple, really. Um, like you said, you think of like a caprese salad is just, tomatoes, basil, mozzarella. But it's really about finding really good ingredients and honoring them. So I wanted to make it clear in the book, like, yes, these are recipes, but you can pull in, a little change here and there if you like. And I really want the book to inspire people to make things themselves too.
I can't wait for tomato season, because that's going to be right
Exactly.
right on my counter next to your book. All those fresh tomatoes. And how many strollers did you go through in Italy? I remember reading that.
Oh, yes, yeah, we did end up going through like 4 strollers. Those cobblestone streets, those little travel strollers we bring were no competition for those cobblestone streets, so we broke a few on the way.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Okay, Arnie, back to barbecue, one of my favorite things. Why do you think barbecue remains such an essential and beloved part of our culture? I mean, if you even it's everywhere now, but like I grew up and I spent a lot of time in the South, and that was huge there, but now it's spread everywhere. But it's almost like its own religion. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's almost like its own religion. I think, it just as mentioned earlier by everybody here, food kind of just brings people together, and like this gentleman here, I grew up around it. I grew up in the kitchen. My mom's house was a little farmhouse, mom and dad's house, and the kitchen was really small, and it had a big dining room and a big living room. But when the family came over, we all like huddled in the kitchen. We were all tight there watching mom cook, and everybody kind of helping out, doing something different. We're all huddled in there. But so food brings people together, but nothing like fire and smoke. There's just something, I forget the right term, but there's something special about gathering around the fire, smelling the meat, as it drips on the coals, or smelling the smoke, of the smoker when you have it just right, that thin blue translucent smoke, just the aroma. I remember when I went to my first cook-off in Houston, and I had never experienced oak before, and somebody was cooking with oak. That was the thing: oak, pecan, hickory. And so when I smelled those smells, I was like, "Ooh, what is that?" It smells amazing, right? I was a mesquite guy. That's what I grew up with. But there's something special about just the fire and being around it. And also, when there's a big political function, a fundraiser, a big party, a family gathering, especially in Texas, and I'm assuming it's the same everywhere else, it's always barbecue, and of course barbecue can mean different things in different cultures and different regions, but the barbecue, the carne asada is always like the main get together when you throw a party, in most cases. And so there's just something special about that. It could be something in our genetics, because that's how we learned how to cook, going back eons. Everything was open fire, and cooking with fire, and cooking over the fire, either direct or indirect. And so if you go back to some of these other cultures, go all the way back down to South America and Argentina and Brazil, they still cook that way. It's a way of life, and so I think it has something to do with that. It's in our genes, and it's something special that triggers our brain and our emotion that just makes barbecue special. And I guess that's kind of the way I look at it.
I think, yep, that says it all right there. And I love that every kind of region of this country too has their own claim to a certain type of
Yes.
barbecue. And it's
Yes.
like, I don't know. we have to sample them all to pick which one we like the best, right?
Correct.
Okay, Dylan, I thought what we might do is to give everybody a quote unquote taste of your book. So I thought maybe if you don't mind picking like one of your sections and kind of walking everybody through what they're in for with this, and so that what kind of get the setup of the book, because it's hard to really explain without doing that, I think.
Yeah, well, baking across America, I would hope that it comes through that it's, we've got 100 recipes and every state is represented. Some states get quite a lot of desserts. If we go sort of to the East Coast, the older the state, the more history they've got. And then you move west and, like I'm in Wyoming. Can you really think of that many Wyoming desserts? It's kind of hard. We've got plenty of bison and, these things, but not much in the way of desserts. So I really had to do quite a lot of research. I think we mentioned earlier. If we take a look at like the state of Missouri, or Missouri, they've got a well-known dessert called a gooey butter cake. And it's, unlike what we've been speaking about, I can firmly tell you that there's nothing healthy in my cookbook. Nothing. I mean, it's tonnages of sugar and just, sweetened condensed milk and all of those wonderful things. There's a reason I have 23 cavities in my mouth. They're all filled, but there's two different versions of the St. Louis gooey butter cake. There's an older version that tells the tale of an old baker in the city during the sort of the early 20th century who messed up his coffee cake recipe. And instead of abject failure, it turned into this gooey butter cake, which, all intents and purposes, it failed, but people really quite liked that. And because it started as a coffee cake, it was a yeasted dough on the bottom. But in modernity, folks like modern folks have developed a new gooey butter cake, which uses, boxed cake mix and these things. So you've got a fight between, if I'm representing the state of Missouri in this cookbook, which one do you choose? Do you choose the recipes that you might find in your great grandmother's cookbooks or just your grandmother's cookbooks? So there was a lot of research there. I traveled to St. Louis last year. We even went to Kansas City, each side of the state, and probably got one of my cavities there, trying to get that recipe down. And we did that across, we shot in half the states, and then most of the research was spent, as Arnie said, these old recipes. I mean, I found a few recipes for gooey butter cake that just listed the ingredients, no quantities, no nothing. They didn't even tell you to bake the thing.
Yep.
And I used to watch my grandmother make cakes, not even cook her, but they would take handfuls of flour. And that doesn't look quite right. So how do you write a recipe? How do you try and, condense that to make that replicable? That's really difficult. So that's what we did, and it should come through beautifully on pictures and the road trip that we did. It was a lot of fun.
It really did. It's quite a trip too. It's more than just a cookbook. It's a travelogue across the country, and you learn a lot about each city too. You always put in a little nugget about what the city's famous for, what are the things that are traditional there. It's great. Thank you. Okay, Danny, kind of along the same lines, but one of the things that as I was reading your cookbook, I was like I was starting to do my own menu planning, but I thought I would ask you, if you were to put together a meal that your family would love, what recipes from your cookbook would you put together?
That's a good question. Well, I'm kind of thinking I'm in a summery mood because it's almost 80 degrees here in New York today. So it's not quite summer season, but that's what I'm in the mood for. So I think I would start with one from the salad chapter. I call it an Italian sub panzanella salad. So a panzanella salad is I grew up, we called it a stale bread salad. It's big chunks of bread and tomatoes. It's very simple. You use, fresh summer tomatoes and big chunks of bread. But for the cookbook, I had this idea of marrying that with an Italian chopped salad, a deli salad with the meats and the provolone and salami and prosciutto and things like that. And so it's not a lettuce-based salad. It's a bread-based salad, which I know sounds weird, but it's panzanella salad with all of the Italian salad fixings in it. And it's one of my favorite recipes in the book. I ate a lot of that when I was making this cookbook. Um, and then one thing I make a lot for my family that I would include on this menu, and I'm probably going to make it for dinner tonight, is a baked risotto. And in the book, I use spring vegetables. So we're skipping around a little bit, but asparagus and peas. So risotto is, a famous dish. It's a great dish. It's one that is good for kids because it's rice and vegetables. But traditionally, it's made standing over the stove. You pour in a little bit of broth at a time. You stir. That gets it a really great texture. But for this recipe and the way I usually make it is I bake it. So there's no stirring. There's no standing over the stove. You put the ingredients in. We use some Parmesan cheese to get a nice creamy, cheesy flavor. And it all just goes in the oven. It's kind of a set it and forget it. So I would do that. And I make that a lot too because my husband's a vegetarian, so that is an easy one for him. But I would also make a meat dish for me. So another classic Italian American dish is chicken cutlets. And my mother always made them in the oven. Traditionally, they're pan fried in oil and olive oil. And she always baked them. But with baking them, you don't get that real crispy texture usually. A fried chicken cutlet. It's very thin. It's crispy with the breadcrumbs on it. But what I like to do and what I put in the recipe is I toast the breadcrumbs first before dipping the chicken in it. And that way you get real crisp, you get that crunch, even though it's baked in the oven, it's not, sitting in oil the way that traditional chicken cutlets are. And then for dessert, another of my favorites in the book. So if you've ever been to an Italian deli, I'm sure you know the rainbow cookies, those 3 layers of almond sponge cake.
yeah.
Sometimes they're called flag cookies, and they have a layer of chocolate on the top and usually raspberry or apricot jam in between the layers. It's a classic. I love them, but they're pretty time consuming to make. You have to make 3 different layers of sponge cake. You have to press them. And my 4-year-old, she loves to bake with me. As you can imagine, she's messy and doesn't have a lot of patience. So I developed a recipe where I marry those traditional rainbow cookies with a chocolate chip cookie. I call it the rainbow cookie. And it's a round cookie with almond paste in the dough. So it's an almond cookie. We've got the 3 colors like the Italian flag. It's dipped in chocolate and then with little freeze-dried raspberries on the bottom. So it's a lot faster to make, but it still has all of those same flavors. And it's a fun, beautiful cookie. So I'd round it out with that.
Oh my God. We're all coming to your house for dinner tonight.
Sure, you're all welcome anytime.
We're all there. We're all there. And I think I just gained 10 pounds from listening to all three of you, just hearing all about all these things, these treats. I thought I'd end up with a little lightning round thing with each of you. So let's start with Arnie, and then we'll go the way we've been going, round robin. Arnie, who is your biggest culinary influence?
That's a good question. It's something I don't normally think about, but when I saw the question in the email, I was like, okay, well, I got to pick somebody, right? I mean, I watched all the cooking shows when I was younger. Food Network was my TV. Um, and I got to say that for me, it's Emerald. Emerald is the dude, and he kind of reminds me of me personality wise. I have my boom, he had the bam, right? And he's entertaining at the same time that he's cooking. But he has great technique and explains things along the way. So for me, I mean, my cooking hero, it would have to be Emerald.
Well, let's manifest a TV show with you and Emerald because I can see it. I'm
Let's
ready.
go, baby.
Let's go, right? Dylan, how about for you?
Well, if we're talking current influence, currently I'm very influenced by Asma, Arnie, and Danny. You all have made me very, very hungry. I wish I could do what you folks do. Sometimes bakers, we can talk as if, we're special. It's all scientific, but no, it's we're so this niche. But if we're talking influences, all of my favorite influences or influencers are dead. They're sort of way back in the past. I think of like Justin Wilson, who was an old Cajun chef, a polarizing figure, an old Cajun chef on Louisiana Public Broadcasting. But I really just enjoy any individual who really makes fun of what they do. Insofar as I think of the segments of like cooking on the Johnny Carson show, have fun with it, mess up, set something on fire so long as you can put it out. I think that dispels a lot of the worry that comes in the kitchen for newcomers.
Well, I've got your show already too, because I just met Alex Traeger, and the two of you need to be doing a show together. She's the queen of the mess, and I love her. Okay, Danny, how about for you? Who's been your biggest culinary influence?
Well, truly my biggest culinary influence is my grandmother and all the cooking that she made. That's probably true for a lot of people. It's a family member. But in terms of famous chefs, there's two that come to mind. So the first is Marcella Hazan, who she wrote a cookbook called The Essentials of Italian Cooking. Well, it was a few books that it was put together as that. She's sometimes called like the Julia Childs of Italian cooking because she brought a lot of Italian cooking to Americans for the first time and like simple, easy recipes. She has a very famous recipe. It's a tomato and onion sauce that I still make at least once a week. It's a
Three
very,
ingredients.
very simple marinara sauce. Yeah, but it's so good. Um, and then another one is Giada De Laurentiis. I also grew up on food TV and watching her all the time. And I think similarly, she has a great way of taking Italian cooking and bringing it to people where they are, making it modern, influencing it or combining with sort of the California cooking that she has now. And I really respect the way that she is able to make her love for Italian cooking known through her work and make it accessible.
That's great, great. Good. There's your show too, you and Gia. Let's go. So everybody contact me and I'll put the shows together. Let's go. Okay, so Arnie,
Yes, sir.
what do you have next? What's coming up for you?
First of all, we're just trying to kind of wrangle it all together, right? Our big project this year is obviously to go on tour here in Texas and promote our book. But I think we want to grow in a couple of other directions as well. We've been talking seriously about podcasting. In my fantasy, I'm going to buy a new motorhome and I'm going to travel Texas and cook with other great cooks out there and see what they do. Kind of like what's his name, Guy Fieri style, right? But right now it's still kind of a fantasy, right? But we've talked about different things like that. Big project is to just also continue to grow our rub company so that hopefully someday we can retire and have some kind of income as well. But yeah, that's the big project. It really is the book. I honestly feel like I want to write another book as hard as it was. Mainly because I feel like there was so much more to put in there that we just didn't have the space to do. So for me, that's kind of another dream right now is to come up with book two. and include a lot more fire.
Yeah.
than the
Well, I'm
first
ready for it, so bring it. Dylan, what do you have coming up? I know you've got a big tour too.
Yes, yes, just like Arnie said. I mean, we got the Baking Across America book tour. It's going to be a month. It's going to be so fun to revisit all the states that we made these recipes on. So I'm really looking forward to that. What's next? That's sort of out of the public eye. Um, you made me want to try some barbecue. I'm not really good at it, man. It's hit or miss currently whether or not I could get a charcoal grill to start. Man, it's hard. And then I might do as Danny said and try tiramisu with some fruit in it. That sounds good.
Doesn't that sound good? Yeah, okay. Danny, how about for you? Do you have any other projects coming up other than colicky children release? Book on advice for parents with colicky children?
Yeah, well, Italianish comes out August 26th, so I am looking forward to that. And the end of the summer when that comes out, I'm looking forward to making some barbecue and doing some baking so I can get all of your cookbooks and some Indian food. But actually, you mentioned the colic. I think one of my goals is to um, incorporate more of my life as a parent into my work. I spend so much time with my kids and playing and reading and everything. And I love to write, so I would love one day to write a picture book or something like that. I haven't quite figured out exactly what my next moves are, my next step, but I would love to Italianish is one way of marrying my parenting with cooking because so much of it is about my kids and for them, but I would like to do even more in the future.
That's fantastic. Like I wish we could do this for hours and hours, but thank you all for being here. This has been one of the most enjoyable things I have done in a long time, and you all have such great perspectives, great thoughts, and I think I want to urge everybody out there to get these books on your shelves, whether it's in your library or it's in your home, which mine will be. So order the titles, get them on your shelves. It's been a huge thrill to share all of these books with everybody out there. And I just want to end by saying thank you. Thank you very, very much. And enjoy. Next up, we have our final session of the day, the closing keynote with Elizabeth Lim. Thank you, Penguin Random House and Dorling Kindersley, for this huge honor for me. Have a great spring, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all